All right, I think we are starting. Hello, everyone. My name is Sir Kurn O'Farrell, and I am the King of Trimaris, hopefully for the foreseeable future. Don't want anything to happen to me or my lovely queen, Maisie. Hope everyone is enjoying these jaunts into medievalism. But tonight I am going to part with tradition, and instead of doing a song, I am going to do a poem. But I want to give you a little bit of background on this poem and why I'm not dressed in Roman attire. So the poem that I'm going to recite was one that was written in probably the late 12th century by a famous French troubadour by the name of Sir Bertrand de Born, who went with King Richard on the Third Crusade, which was my favorite crusade. All the stuff that happened before the Third Crusade up to during the Third Crusade are my favorites. And a little background, more background about Bertrand. Go live, invite. I don't know. Sorry, I'm getting some kind of a message. I guess I don't know what that is. Anyway, so Bertrand wrote a lot of songs and poetry, and mostly about war and politics. He liked to fight, and so I heard this poem the first time on one of the CDs, and it was all about fighting and battles. So I was like, "That's cool." And I'm like, "Yep." So he was also when there wasn't fighting going on, and later, a couple hundred years later, when Dante wrote the Dante's Inferno, he named Bertrand the sower of schism, which I thought was kind of interesting. A little backstory there. So Richard had a nickname, Richard Coeur de Lion, the Lionheart, and most people know that one. But he had another nickname, which was called the Lord of Yea and Nay, which is from this poem that Bertrand wrote about Richard. But it was called the Lord of Ach and No, and when you translate it, it's Yea and Nay. And so a lot of recent historians have taken this title and try to label Richard as having some interesting sexual orientation with King Philip of France. I read a book called The Warriors of God, which was really about Richard and Saladin during the Third Crusade. But the author really tried to promote this idea that Richard and Philip were together. But it was well known back then that nobility shared beds, and that's where it comes from. But the real reason, I think, why he was called the Lord of Ach and No, and I don't really care if he had some interesting sexual orientation. That's up to him. He was still a badass and one of my favorite historical figures. But whether intentional or unintentional, that's what people do. But the name of this poem is the Lord of Ach and No, and it's translated, so it's not exactly the perfect translation, but it's the one I heard and it's the one I like. So here's the Lord of Ach and No, and I hope everybody can hear me. So there we go. Put this away. All right. The gay time of spring pleases me well when the leaves and the flowers come. And it pleases me to hear the merriment of the bird making their song ring through the woods. And it pleases me to see tents and pavilions pitched on the meadows. And it brings me happiness to see knights and horses in armor. It pleases me too when the scouts put people in herds to flight. And it pleases me to see great numbers of armed men coming after them on the run. And it pleases me in my heart to see strong castles besieged, the outer walls broken and smashed, and the army on the banks surrounded by ditches and palisades of strong stakes close together. It pleases me too when the Lord is first to the attack, armed on his horse and without fear, for then should he inspire within his men courage most valiant. When the battle is joined, let each man be ready to follow him with pleasure, for none will be respected until he has given and taken many blows. Clubs and swords, colorful helmets, shields pierced and smashed shall we see at the beginning of the battle, so that the horses of the dead and wounded will wander aimlessly. And when he enters the fray, let every man of rank think only of hacking heads and arms, for a dead man is worth much more than a live loser. I tell you, neither food, nor drink, nor sleep have such savor for me as when I hear both sides crying, "At them, at them!" And I hear the riderless horses crashing through the shadows, and I see the dead falling in the grassy ditches, and I see them with penance through their sides. Yet, despite this, love wants a knightly lover, good with his weapons and generous in serving, sweet-tongued and a good giver, who knows what is right to do both outdoors and in for a man of his potency. He should be amusing company, courtly and pleasing, while a lady that lies with a lord like that is clean of all her sins. But for me, I am in love with a maiden of high lineage, in whom there is every beauty, and I am loved by her, and she gives me such courage that I could never be vanquished, not even by the most presumptuous. So, lords, I tell you, pawn your castles, pawn your towns, and pawn your cities before you stop making war. Go now, take this song to the queen, and tell her she has been at peace too long. All right, there you go. A couple little mess-ups, but anyway, hope you'd enjoyed it. It's a great poem. If you want to find out more about Bertrand, just do a Google search. He's a really interesting person. So, Vivat Trimeris. All right.